I found that when I started teaching education, there was such a need for this topic because there are a lot of myths involved around what you can and can't do with a prenatal client. Good morning! We are on our way to my home studio, Blue Moon Pilates, to conduct a workshop. And it's one of my kind of signature workshops called She's Pregnant, Not Broken. And 5 hours, so we'll be there from 11 to 4. And we have a decently sized group, about 13 people. And the reason why I came up with this workshop is primarily to support either newer instructors or instructors that have been teaching a bit but really haven't worked with prenatal clients, or maybe they need more repertoire for their toolbox. But I found that when I started teaching education, there was such a need for this topic because there are a lot of myths involved around what you can and can't do with a prenatal client, and some of them are so conservative. And she's pregnant, like she's preparing for a major athletic event. So I found that this workshop has been very helpful for a lot of newer teachers and those that just need to grasp better concepts when it comes to working with prenatal clients. So we are headed to the studio. We're going to set up the studio, set up the space, and get it going. So one thing I found is through your Pilates certification, I mean, it's a ton of hours, ton of money, but you know, they can only cover so much. And as a Pilates teacher, we are meant to help people feel good in their bodies, right? Move well, find the resilience within their body. But we're not fixers, right? We're not physical therapists. And oftentimes, like, clients will come to us and ask questions like, I have this issue, I have that issue, how can I deal with this? And you're not always going to have the answers. We didn't go through that type of schooling. And I know I struggled with that a lot while I was teaching around the Orange County area, especially the first 7 years of my teaching career. And I always felt like, gosh, I want to know more. And so I never hesitate to ask questions. And I actually used to teach at a studio that's no longer open because the owner wanted to focus on her family. But I taught at a Pilates therapy studio in Irvine, and the owner was a doctorate in physical therapy. So everyone who came there was there for physical therapy. And I felt very insecure because I'm like, I'm like only a Pilates instructor. Like I, don't know a whole lot. And it's like, but we do. We have so many tools at our fingertips. It's just learning how to use them in the correct way. So I just asked so many questions of the boss, of my colleagues on working with certain populations. And I've just found now that if I could be of service and help other teachers navigate certain areas, especially when it has to do with prenatal work, or working with certain back conditions or hip, knee, etc., like I want to be a conduit for that and make it easier for them. Now, do I have all the answers? Absolutely not. Again, I'm not a physical therapist, but I've learned a lot of tools along the way, and why not share it with others? Because at the end of the day, this is a client-centered service industry, and it's not about us, it's about serving our clients. So that's why I do what I do, and I love it, and I need to get over.
Actually, going back to your question earlier about why we want to train. I had a really bad experience doing reformer Pilates. Like, obviously, when you're pregnant, you can't do a plank, after however many weeks, or even if you're too nauseous. But anywho, so it was a group class, so that was my problem. But anyways, the instructor just tapped me on the shoulder and said I can just sit and watch instead of modifying or giving me an option to modify. And I just wanted to cry.
Aww.
Because you can't do a lot of the things that you normally did, so it felt like a punch to the gut. But,
yeah.
That was my motivation for this.
See, I love it. And thanks for bringing that up. And I was going to say this earlier and lost my train of thought in the middle. And then it came back later, as always, typical Heidi fashion. But my goal too for you guys is if you are in a group class setting, like, can you keep the class flowing and still adhere to what the prenatal client needs? I have had many times taught group classes with a client that started off before she was pregnant, came in and said, hey, I'm pregnant. Like, that's awesome. And she kept coming to class every week. And how do we adapt the exercises and make it work for her? And sometimes too, I would write classes that literally were working around that prenatal client and nobody knew, because the exercises are still so beneficial for everybody involved that no one had any clue that it was a prenatal class. There's always so much value in doing continuing education. I think as teachers in general, we are lifelong learners ourselves. And when we continue to learn and hone in on our practice and kind of fine tune working with maybe it's special populations or working with certain conditions, that ultimately expands our growth as a teacher, expands our toolbox, but then that trickles down to our client and our client experience. And so when we continue to further invest in our education, that ultimately makes us more valuable, but also creates a better experience for our clients overall. Do you have a favorite place that you like to go to that is like so dependable, like so like you can go there and you know that you're getting like the biggest bang for your buck, that it's so reliable, like bar none, never disappoints, right? Like, I think for me, I think of my hairdresser, Caesar. So I've been going to Caesar. Now, don't look at this because I'm getting a haircut this weekend, but I've been going to Caesar for over 20 years. So I used to drive far to go see him, and then he moved closer, which is amazing. And he himself is an educator of hair, he and his wife, and they are constantly taking classes and workshops and conducting workshops. And I mean, no one does an A-line cut and color quite like Caesar does. So he never seems to disappoint. Think about where you go on a daily basis, whether it's your personal trainer or your favorite restaurant, a good chef that you really love, a nail technician, if you will. Comment below and shout them out. I went somewhere else one time. One time I went somewhere else because I was trying to cut corners and save a buck. And that was earlier on when I first started seeing him. And the sad part is, this is a funny story, is that we went to a mutual friend's wedding. He took one look at my hair and said, that's not my work. Never again. So when you find someone that has so much value in what they do, you want to keep going back, right? So for me as a teacher, I want to add that value so that people will keep wanting to come back. I don't want to let anyone down. I'm human. I might let people down, but my goal is to stay dependable as an educator. Thank you so much for being here. If you enjoyed that content, what are you waiting for? Subscribe to my channel and you'll be notified when the next video drops. And come find me on Instagram. I'm always around there. And find me on my webpage at movewithheidicoles.com. I hope to see you around.